The state of Jammu and Kashmir had a special status in the Indian constitution under Article 370, but Hindu nationalists for a long time, for decades, demanded the revocation of Article 370. They said J&K, Jammu and Kashmir is just another state of India and should not have any special status. Well, it's 19 days now, and the Kashmir Valley of 8 million people has been under a communications clampdown. The Kashmir Valley has been under a communications clampdown now for 19 days. There's no internet, no mobile phones. Some landlines have been around, but very few people have landlines anyway. And I think the greatest human rights violation in Kashmir Valley is the communications clampdown itself, which the United Nations Human Rights Council described as a form of collective punishment because people are unable to contact their families. There are people flying into Kashmir just to look after their aged parents, just to take medicines for them. Not being able to get in touch with your family for days itself is a big human rights violation. In today's world, to live without internet and phone for weeks on end, and there is no sign of this coming to an end. The greatest human rights violation is to change the constitutional status of millions of people without even consulting them. And I think the Kashmir Valley today is living under an unprecedented security blanket and clampdown. Well, schools were closed for many days, but they were open, I think, last Monday. And despite the opening of schools, parents are not sending their children to school because they're too afraid of security situation. In South Kashmir in particular, it is said that the number of students turning up at school is as low as 2-3%. Uh, in terms of assembly, the right to assembly is banned. More than 4 people cannot be together on the streets under Section 144 of the law. Uh, there's an undeclared curfew in many places. People cannot travel for more than a few kilometers. They cannot go to another town or district easily within the valley. People in Kashmir are used to long periods of curfews and tension, and they stock up and they take care. The last time something like this happened was in 2016. It's much bigger than that now, but in 2016, 100 people died, more than 100 people, and curfews went on for many weeks. So people are used to this situation. The main shortage is of medicines. Food is taken care of. The undeclared curfews relaxed for a few hours every day. It becomes particularly strict on Fridays because people tend to protest after the Friday prayers. Yeah, as far as I know, only one journalist was arrested and has been freed, but it's inconsequential. Local journalists are not being allowed to report freely. Journalists from Delhi can fly in and report and come back, but local journalists are not being allowed to move around so freely or report so freely. So I know of only one journalist who was picked up and he was released the next day. Political leaders, you have to understand that 4,000 political people are in jails. Many have been flown out of Kashmir into mainland India, into jails in places like Agra, the city of the Taj Mahal, because prisons in Kashmir are overflowing. Now, these prisoners include top politicians of the state, former chief ministers, people who were allies of the government of India against the secessionists and the separatists in Kashmir. So everybody is silenced. The local media, newspapers did not come out for many days. Now they're coming out, but they are carrying articles on environment and health because politics is just too risky to write about. As I said, reports are that 4,000 people have been arrested so far. These are either politicians or politically inclined young men, civil society leaders, and so on. In terms of number of people killed, there are about 3 people who have been killed in protests, according to news reports, but the government denies any deaths at all. 150 people, according to reports from hospitals, have been injured in pellet injuries or tear gas shell injuries. Absolutely, there's an all-round fear of escalation of violence. The question is not if, but when. And I think the government's effort is to tire out the people. We should ideally by now have seen a lot of violence going by the recent history of the Kashmir Valley, but it's not taking place because partly because of fear and partly because of the unprecedented security clampdown. There's a man with a gun every few meters in the Kashmir Valley. So people are just too afraid to protest right now, and despite that, there have been protests in different kinds of places which are difficult to report and account for because of the security and communications clampdown. But there's another fear of violence. There's a street violence, the mob violence, stone pelting, security forces firing on them, people getting injured. But the second kind of fear of violence is that of militancy. And news reports say that the Indian government fears Pakistan sending in militants, including perhaps Afghan militants, through the porous line of control. Kashmiri youth have also been taken to militancy. So there's both these kinds of violence. The fear is there, both immediately and in the long run. I think the government of India, in my personal view, should end the security clampdown and the communications clampdown immediately and hold dialogue with Kashmir civil society leaders on how we can find a way ahead without violence and evolve a political consensus that makes sure that Kashmiris do not feel that they are being unilaterally imposed a decision on them.